The Knave Adventure Game Jam has ended with over 118 new D&D one-shots. Today, I'm going to pick my top 3. Ever since Knave 2nd Edition came out, people have been asking me, where are the adventures for this new system? I have written a couple myself, but we need a lot more. We need tons of things for people to play, and the community came through in spades. There's now enough Knave 2nd Edition adventures that you could run a new one-shot every single night for 2 years without repeating. The community was also super helpful in terms of ranking these adventures. Once the game jam was over, they went through every single one and rated them based on 3 criteria. First of all, was it well written? Was it original? Was it fun to read? Secondly, was it well organized? Was the game master able to find the information that they need as they needed it while running the game? And third, and perhaps most importantly, was it fun to run in an OSR playstyle? That means situations rather than plots. Was the adventure location very interconnected? Was it highly interactive so players could take things that they found and create their own endings and create their own story as they played? I'll put a link to where you can find the list of all of these adventures down in the description below, but really anything in the top 20 is just fantastic. I was blown away by how good these were. Nevertheless, I had to pick my favorite 3, so here they are. First of all, we have Questionable Morals, which is a fantastic pun. It's an absurd, surreal, gonzo-style adventure created by Ogre College. The first thing I noticed right away was the incredibly professional layout that this thing had. These people knocked it out of the park. I get the feeling that they've done this before. Richard Jackson, that's who it is. So the general idea here is that this is a hex crawl, but takes place inside someone's mind. It reminded me a little bit of things like Psychonauts, for example. Your adventuring party has eaten some questionable morals, which are hallucinogenic fungi, and you are now tripping out of your mind, and you're now in a different zone of existence entirely, and you have to find your way out. I feel like this adventure would be a really good palate cleanser. Maybe the players went and foraged in the woods and they accidentally ate the wrong thing. Boom, you can break this out the next session and say, you guys are tripping, and this is where you are. Here's the hex crawl inside the mind. There's 10 major hexes here. Each of them has a very strange encounter that you can find there. The landscape is very weird. It's very different from hex to hex, so there's lots of variety. It's not necessarily supposed to make a whole lot of sense, which fits with the theme, but you have a lot of interesting interactive stuff to deal with. There's a vibe check system right here where you start at calm, and then you're going to be rolling a d6 periodically and moving around this chart. It's a hex flower, which is something that I've seen on the blogosphere before. But this emotion determines the disposition of the mind's denizens and its environment. You start with calm, but if you roll the wrong way, you could get distracted or disgusted or anxious, and then everything around you turns into that. And let's say you rolled a 6 to move on to disgusted, you would also move down to this table right here and roll maybe a 3, and you have leggy mushrooms circle and kick at Viking mallard, or some giant hands mud wrestle. But you have to add that anxious vibe to it. Hex number 1 is the Cult of Greg, which is a commune. 14 milk jugs house 44 Gregs, who are hard at work distributing milk, fixing jugs, preaching the tenets of Greg, and seeking heretics for sacrifice. Number 2 is the nasal cavity. A colossal nose protrudes from the earth. One nostril is completely blocked. There's a little picture down here with the snot golems mining their way through it down to some valuable treasure. The goal here is to find enough treasures in these hexes that you find these, what are they called? Motes of reality, something like that. And once you find enough of them, you'll be able to get out of this headspace and back to the real world. There's a mushroom thicket with a fungal forest. The air is thick with mud and saturated with spores. The thicket is home to a primitive tribe of 2-dimensional myconids. There's the telescope with brain fog, a thick pervasive fog that tastes like your favorite flavor of ice cream, lazily wafts from the domed building. There's the dream factory, where a doctor has attempted to power her experimental dream separator with a valuable treasure. The experiment failed and is now waking nightmares have overrun the factory. Remove the valuable treasure from the dream separator and you can keep it. A great glass pyramid. There's Camp Pectin, the beached longship, Leggy Grove, Lake Lactose. At the end, there is D66 valuable treasures that you can sprinkle in here. Some of them, the ones on number 6 typically, have a Mote of reality. You find these and you can escape. The whole adventure is goofy, it's funny, it's highly interactive. There's lots of things to do, even if they're often very silly, and it should be a great way to break up a more serious adventure, perhaps. The second of my favorite adventures is Caverns of the Sacred Fire by Francisco Lemos. And look at this map. This is probably the best map in the Adventure Jam, and there were some really strong contenders. I love the simple black and white look, but it's very detailed, and you can immediately tell what's going on in each room just by looking at one page. The location is highly interconnected. Most of the rooms have more than one way that you can get to them, and there's a lot of verticality built into it as well. You're starting at the top and climbing down this long gullet. There's a lot of branching paths that go off of it into all of these weird rooms deeper and deeper into the earth. Maps like this are so fantastic because a picture is worth 1,000 words. If you can draw accurately what is in a room, then you almost don't even need to read it. The reading just helps flesh it out and gives you more details as to what's going on. But when players enter from this door or from this door, you can tell them immediately what they see because you can see it right in the picture. Here's the gist of this one. Long ago, there was a chaos deity that is exiled to the mortal plane, and it was living down here. Odd by Miss Marvels, many of the people turned it into a pilgrimage site. As centuries passed, the deity appeared to vanish, as did the devotees. Although traces of the transmuting force remained trapped in the depths. There's a lot of mutation and transformation magic associated with this adventure. And some decades ago, some monks settled it here and turned it into a kind of monastery where they lived in pitch blackness. But a few days ago, you were recruited by Hanush, a mysterious figure rumored to possess knowledge of alchemical brews and forbidden rituals, willing to pay a handsome sum for certain rare ingredients. Your task? To delve into this ancient, forgotten abyss and retrieve them. Here's a whole bunch of different ingredients that you could include here. I like how you can adjust the difficulty of this adventure by deciding how many ingredients you need to collect, and especially how hard those are to collect. So down here at the bottom, the egg of a spider moth, beware, they can hatch at any moment. This is a hard one to retrieve. Whereas one up here, giant aphid's milk, going to be a lot easier. Like the previous one we looked at, this has a lot of great variety. Each room has its own theme, it has its own dangers, it has its own rewards, and it feels like a new challenge every time you go to a new place. That being said, it has a much more coherent theme than the first one because this isn't as gonzo and as psychedelic. It's a place with its own history and background, and that's fleshed out by exploring. Some of the rooms include a fossilized giant, there's an aphid farm, vines room, and a lot of these rooms are very connected to each other. So for example, the vines room number 5 over here, you can only really solve it or turn it off by going into a different room, which would be room 10, where you can find its heart. Or room 6 over here, there is this statue head that seems to talk, but there's really kind of a speaking tube that goes all the way through room 8 up into room 9. So you need to figure out who's talking to you all the way up there. There's plenty of secrets in this adventure, which is a lot of fun. I like it when an adventure has things that players may not find, because they feel really great when they do. In this case, plenty of secret rooms that they can get into or get at from different directions that maybe they weren't supposed to. I think that's always really fun. A chapel, a tapestry hall, a whole underground jungle with a huge stone pyramid that transforms into a golem that'll fight you. And at the very bottom of the dungeon, there is the sacred fire itself, which you dive into. It will teleport you to a random room in the dungeon, but also transform you. You'll get more and more mutated as time goes by. A whole bunch of really great treasures right here because they are creative and can be used in interesting ways. For example, you might find 2 wooden mannequin hands that can magically adhere to any surface. There's a random encounter table with a little bestiary at the back of here. You might run into some bandits or acid worms, spider moths, some monks who are still in this underground monastery, wounded pilgrims, bats, giant aphids, and lots of really great illustrations too. Very impressive work. The whole layout is much simpler than the one we just looked at, but I think it is very effective, very easy to read, and very evocative. Now, the third of my favorite adventures was the Toymancer's Folly by Mal Starr. Whereas the first was a hex crawl and then a dungeon crawl, this one is more of a mansion crawl, a little bit in the vein of my adventure, The Waking of Willoughby Hall. Here's our 3 floors here. As you can see, I like how it's all illustrated and it's 3-dimensional, so it's much easier to tell what's going on in there, just like in the previous adventure. You go in at level 1 right here. You can take these stairs up to the 2nd floor, or you can hang out on the bottom level, and there's this whole room in the center that's open to the sky, where there's a tree going up, all the way up to a tree house here on the 2nd level. Again, elements of verticality are always really good, because if you can add more dimensions that players can travel in, that adds more possibilities of ways they can explore. And you have all the way down to the Toymancer's factory on the bottom floor right here. The background here is that there is a famous toy maker in this town that has built a mansion on top of his factory. But in the process of doing so, he has cut down the largest tree in the forest where a dryad lives. And the whole house is now made out of this wood. The dryad has kind of possessed it and is now in control. As part of his punishment, the dryad is turning trespassers inside the mansion into toys, but through a spell called Recast. And she's going to keep doing this until she gets back the years that the tree lost. So every time she turns someone into a toy, she kind of steals the years that they would have lived. Once this adds up to 3,000 years, Then she will finally let go. The tree will rise again and everyone will be freed. This is definitely supposed to be a spooky or a creepy adventure. It might be really good to run around Halloween. Being turned into a toy yourself can be a lot of fun because now you're just much smaller. You can do a little bit less damage, but you move just as fast and you can fit into smaller spaces, of course. This adds a whole new way to explore the environment. A short bestiary of some of the weird toys that can attack you, and I like how their random encounters are right at the beginning, as well as delve shifts, which is a mechanic from Knave 2e, where every once in a while the environment will shift and cause you to reassess how you're approaching things. Lots of great examples of solid adventure design. For example, this door over here has a jack-in-the-box door, where normally it's locked, but if you find the crank, then you can open it. And as you crank it open, it makes the jack-in-the-box sound, right? Dun, da, dun, da, 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 dun. Once it gets to the end, the door explodes. So it's telegraphing very clearly that something's going to happen when you get to the end of the song. And if players keep cranking it, well, that's their own fault. If you find the daughter's room, you can find an ornamental dollhouse, which if you touch will transform you into a doll. But if you look very carefully at it, you can see a green glow and find where the dryad's heart is. If you destroy this, then you can win at least one possible ending. Other creepy little things, you can find a pull string doll where every time you pull on it, you roll a d4 and you get a line that it says, often a little rhyme that gives you clues as to what's going on. But one of the possible ones is, "Oh dear God, where am I? What's happening?" and then cuts out. So it feels like it's being possessed by something. Great little touch. And I love this little touch at the very end. There's actually a paper doll that you can cut out and construct if you want to add a creepy little prop to your adventure. So those are my top 3 adventures. They're the ones that I think did the very best, and I'm going to send rewards out to those people. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out a couple of the runners up that I think you should definitely check out as well. For example, we have the Hunt for the Last Owlbear, which is going to be a little hex crawl where you can go around and try and hunt down this one owlbear that is kind of terrorizing this area of pseudo-Southeast Asia. A little bit like the hunts for these man-eating tigers that used to happen back in the day. There's also Godhead, where you can find this head of a god that's been stolen off of his statue and try and return it back to where it came from inside its dungeon. Just look at these great dungeon illustrations. So much fantastic map work all throughout the Adventure Jam. This one, Beneath the Spindle, was quite impressive as well. Again, great map making, lots of really interesting and original situations that you can put the players through, like this corridor that's actually inside a bigger room that you can cut your way out of, or this hall of slugs that you can push your way through to get to this secret door. Really fun. And a lot of the vibes feel kind of like Vermis, at least the design work does. The Curious Creeps of Crimson Creek, that's quite a mouthful, is another really fun one. It is a hex crawl, but you can see here that it is quite a bit bigger than the hex crawls in the previous adventures that we've looked at. It's a whole adventure zone full of different problems and situations and lots of great, very flavorful NPCs to interact with. I love how most of them seem to be generated by the random tables inside Knave 2nd Edition. We have like Osric Chuffmark and Beatrix Swineditch, all great little illustrations right here, very flavorful. Blackfern Thicket, there's a Swineditch circus you can investigate, a cemetery, lots of creepy little things that'd be perfect, again, for Halloween. So there we go. I'll put links to where you can find those adventures as well as more than 100 more down in the description below. Thanks so much to everyone who participated in the Adventure Game Jam. You guys did amazing work, and it was a joy to go through these adventures and see what you had created. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.